Hey there, I'm Ryan, and this is the Dreyer Drive podcast, a podcast all about siblings and the people, places, and pop culture that raised us. And in this week's episode, you are going to learn a little bit about where my dad hides the bodies. You're going to hear about Jacqueline's completely disgusting go-to movie theater snack, and you'll hear the remarkable, true story about two brothers whose feud not only destroyed a family and split up a town, but also somehow resulted in two of the world's largest sporting brands to be created. And as always, there will be an unhinged text message from a family member at the end of this episode, and you don't want to miss this one because it also includes a sound clip. Let's get to it. We know that there's some new things. So one, I've got a new baby. Right? Let's start with that. Got a new baby. Kind of a big deal. I've got the baby beard. I haven't shaved. I haven't had time to shave in like the last 9 days. But got a new baby. And as a result, I haven't logged onto my computer for like 2.5 weeks. And it's like I literally never logged into this computer before. I'd logged out. It made like all of my accounts log out. And like I opened my computer. This thing pops up and it's like, we need to update your system. I'm like, all right. So I put in my password. Then I open Chrome and it's like, who's using this? I'm like, the same person who's been using this computer for the last 4 years. Else. It's only me, but I had to select that. And then obviously it's like, well, we need to update Chrome. And then I go to log into Riverside using my Google account, which then needs to be logged into. But my 1Password account is logged out and no longer. So anyways, it was a whole thing. But we're here. So...
And your computer's like, where do you get off thinking that you can just pick right up where we left off?
Where have you been? You have some questions to answer. Literally, I had to answer questions. Who's using this computer? Me?
What's your childhood best friend's name?
Yeah, exactly. It's changed. It's changed in the last 3 weeks.
I don't want to choose.
So new baby. What people don't know, or what they won't be able to pick up on, because we are so prepared, there'll be no gap in the last episode and this episode because we had pre-recorded some episodes. But yeah, it's been 3 weeks since you and I have had one of the... No, a month since we've had one of these.
That's almost, yeah.
And almost 3 weeks since you and I have actually talked.
I told my husband Justin I was coming down to record. I record in my laundry room and the studio, as we call it in our house. But I was like, we're gonna go. I have to go down and record for the podcast. He was like, "Is this uploaded anywhere?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "So you don't cast?" I was like, "Yes, we strictly pod.
It's just a pod.
Just a pod. We don't do the
heavy
casting
focus
part,
on the
actually.
pod."
I'm like, it's actually just me and Ryan. We don't even know what we're doing with this. We're just recording.
It's actually called a pod keep. It's a new genre. It's called a pod keep.
Drive. It stays on my drive.
Yeah, it's a pod drive keeper. It's a pod keeper drive.
It's pod secret. It's just a secret, and no one can know about it.
We're basically, what's it called? LARPing. We're basically LARPing, but we're doing the podcast version.
It's pod.
We set up our microphones and our headphones. We subscribe to a podcast recording service. Oh, completely separate. You just reminded me. So, I did these recordings for work before I left Canada. So we're going back 1.5 years ago. So I did these recordings like, here are some resume tips or whatever it was. I actually can't remember the topic of the video. I did this recording. I have my Yeti mic like in front and I do the whole thing. And I finished recording the videos. I'm like, oh man, I didn't have my Yeti mic on. And I was like, but the sound quality from my computer isn't actually that bad because what I had, it was my headphones were still on. And so they were sitting on my desk and it recorded through the headphone microphone. Mm. And I was like, you know what though? It sounds okay and no one's going to notice. And so the company chopped up the video and put it out. Literally the first comment was like, your mic's not on. I was like, okay. Like, really? Because you could just see the back of the mic and that's where the light would be. And there's no light on the back of the microphone. It's literally an unplugged mic. Just as a prop in front of me, I look like the corniest.
Unfortunately, I like to think that I'm thick-skinned, but I'm extremely thin-skinned, like paper thin, onion skin thin, so nobody can have anything negative to say about what's happening here whatsoever, or I will crumble.
And I'm sure it's only when it's someone who's very close to you. If anyone from the outside world said anything, you're like, yeah, I'm okay with that. If anybody who's like within, a direct blood relationship to you, you will lose your mind. And how do I know this? Because I'm the exact same. Someone from the outside world's like,
Look,
your mic's not on. Your mic's not on. I'm like, yeah, I pay a lot for the props. If Seiko said it, or if like mom said it, I would lose my mind. I would be like, do you know what it's like? Do you have any idea the pressure that I'm under?
No. I just had this conversation with my doctor. HIPAA is out the window for me. I will tell you anything that I discussed with my doctor. But she was like, how are things going? It was right before I was in Africa for 3 weeks while you were having your baby. So we were just ships in the night. And so we were just checking my medication before I went to Africa, because I was going with 19 teenagers and I was one of the only adults on the trip. And so we were just going through my medication, and I take an anxiety medication. She's like, how's your anxiety? I'm like, it's been fine, except I was like, when like you back out of your driveway and you didn't check all the way and you're like, oh my gosh, what if there was a kid behind me and I ran over that kid, and then your whole day is ruined because you're thinking about like, there was no kid. There was not even a kid within a kilometer of your driveway, but because like that thought was put in your head, I'm like, and and like it just ruins your whole day because all you can think about is like you could have ran over a kid. And she was like, no, Jacqueline, that's a mental health issue. And I was like, is it though?
Yep. There's been a lot of that in the past.
Moral of the story, we increased my dosage before I left.
You got a Costco.
I was worried about that.
A Costco level supply of lorazepam.
Absolutely, I did. When I was on the trip, Addie, every day at like 5 p.m., I would just dissociate because I had just like had it. And that was like, Addison was my daughter who was with me, I could watch you, A, take your medication, and then B, sit at the back of the bus for like a half an hour and just like stare into space. And then she's like, and then I'd see you just like slap your knees. And then I'd be like, oh, she's back. I'm coming. And I'm like, all right, guys.
They saw your head rise above the bus seat. Just you come back up from the dead and you're like, all right, guys, today's activities. Yeah, I still can't believe that not that you went under those circumstances. Maybe people from that group would listen to this podcast. But for me, there is no way where I'm like, I'm sorry, can I please go on a trip with 19, 18-year-olds who have never left their hometown? And can we please go to when I say foreign country, like I mean foreign in every way possible. Mm-hmm. Can we go there? Can we all go? And can I be responsible for many of you? Yeah, so new child, you had a life-changing experience to Africa, the entire continent.
Mm-hmm. Just obviously, and it's the same all over. So no, we went to Kenya and Zimbabwe specifically. Love Zimbabweans. They all were shocked that I have an 18-year-old, which was the nicest. So I would just lead into that as often as I could, and Addie got so sick of it everywhere we went. I was like, so I'm the mom. This is my 18-year-old daughter. And they'd be like, oh! I'm like, I know.
Now would be a very good time. I don't think we've mentioned it on the podcast so far, but the fine fox of a mom comment to our mother.
Addie was like, Mom, this is your fine fox of a mom moment. Like, I can see you just growing with power. Every time someone says this, she's like, you're just getting insane with this power.
Would you like to tell the story, or would you like me to tell the story?
Do you remember it, or do you remember it through the telling of mom I remember being there. I remember the lady.
I remember it being told the first time it was being told. I think we were in an elevator, perhaps, going down from...
We were at a hospital, yeah. Dad was staying in the hospital. I believe his appendix had burst, or he was... something along those lines. I think it was his appendix burst, didn't it? Like at work or something like that. And so we went to go visit him in the hospital, and you can imagine there were 5 of us at the time.
Nothing raises his spirits like 5 kids coming pouring in your hospital room.
Screaming kids. And I think we were probably all under the age of 10.
12, yeah,
at
10
the
or
time.
12.
12, yeah, I guess we got a 10-year span between us. And I remember being young. I was probably 7 or 8. And Mom, we had just left Dad's hospital room, and Mom was kind of like ushering us, to the elevator. And this lady stopped us and asked Mom, like, are these all your children? And Mom said, yeah. And she turned to us and said, kids, you got one fine fox of a mama. And the way that Mom lit up, like, that was one of the defining moments of her entire life. We have heard the story so many times because every time she looked in the mirror from that point on, she would remind us. I remember getting ready for church so many Sundays, and Mom would be in the bathroom. We all shared one bathroom because there was only one bathroom at Dreyer Drive. And Mom would be, like, doing her hair. It was so big and so red. And she'd be like, just so you know, kids, you got one fine fox of a mama.
And then, so that story was told, and it's continued, like, it's still being told. Like, we're talking now,
She's
we're going
told
back
my kids
30?
that. Like, it's generational.
I actually also don't
or you
remember. I do not remember the event. I feel like I remember it being told on the elevator, like, did you guys hear what she just said? And we're like, no. And then she told the story.
I
like,
remember,
okay,
or at least my
she
brain
did
thinks
not.
I remember the lady. Or maybe I just made this up in my head, but...
Again, like, I don't remember the moment. I just remember the story being told for decades. So anyways, all of this to be said, you were going to do the same thing. You'd be like, do you remember when we went to Zimbabwe? And people were so surprised.
And not only that, I've applied this to the entire Zimbabwe culture. I'm like, so what I've learned, people are like, how was your trip? And I'm like, so good. They could not believe that I had an 18-year-old daughter. It's like, cool.
Let me tell you about Zimbabwean culture. I surprised everybody. Like, somehow.
They were shocked that I was so young and vibrant.
And that is the core ingredient for, one, you having a great experience, and two, you having such a great opinion of the people of Zimbabwe. Because
so polite, so kind, so respectful.
Seven people who told you that you look too young to have an 18-year-old, who are probably connected, and the first woman who told you probably like, hey, tell her this and watch her reaction.
And also, a man did ask me for $35,000, and I did consider it because he did tell me that I was too young to have an 18-year-old
Was this after? Yeah, was this after he saw you light up?
Oh. Read a check.
Shall we?
That's our catch-up.
There's more to catch up than this, but knowing that we have a podcast to record, and obviously we have a time constraint as always, I'm thinking it makes sense to jump into a question.
Well, the other thing is so much has happened in, like, this span since we last talked. Like, there's no way to even...
We talked about this on our last call. When you come back from a trip like the one that you had, which for some people in some situations is life-changing, right? Like, it's a complete, like, eye-opening, life-changing experience. And you come back and people are like, so, how was Africa? And you're like, I don't even know where to begin. So you tell them that people complimented you on how young you look, right?
But, absolutely, because I don't know where else to go with it. I didn't tell you this, but we're going to Hawaii on Tuesday night.
Your mom told me.
And I booked it, like, kind of last minute, because I just, like... It's my 40th birthday. Not that I'm, like, a big, like, age person, but I also, like, don't want to just be here for my 40th birthday. Like, it felt, like, important enough that I was like, we should, like, go somewhere. So we've been waiting for Aaron, our youngest, to turn 8 so that he can go on this night dive that we did once in Big Island, where we went night diving with manta rays. They, like, feed them... What's the word for it when it glows in the dark?
Plankton?
Phosphorescence?
Phosphorescent plankton?
Something like that, and because they light up.
I'm just combining what you said with what I said. I'm combining the two wrong answers together, hoping that it somehow makes the right answer.
You just tuned into Scuba Diving Podcast, where we talk about...
all
what
things...
do I know about any of this?
Aquaculture, marine culture, marine aquaculture,
so
again.
we're waiting for Aaron to be old enough so that he could go do this dive with us, and we booked it, but because I booked it so last minute, like I booked it last week, and we're leaving on Tuesday night, we couldn't get seats anywhere together. But I was like, oh, like my two older kids are 15 and 18, I was like, they're literally in the back row of the plane, and I don't have to care because, like, legally I don't have to care anymore. Like, the airline, usually I would call the airline and be like, where's that little family traveling together? And I was like, actually, I don't care. Legally, I only have to sit next to Aaron, who's 8.
2 times ago, I flew to Utah. We flew somewhat as a family. It was like me, mom, and dad, and maybe I can't remember if Dan was with us. But because of traveling for work, I had status, and I get bumped up. And anyway, so I was checking into the flight, and they're like, "Oh, we've got like a business class seat for you. Like, would you like it?" I'm like, "Absolutely." And remember, I'm on a flight with mom and dad, and I go back and sit back with them, and I'm like, "Hey, I just got bumped up to business class." And dad leans over and he's like, "You should give that to mom." And I was like, no, no, I'm not. I understand where that's coming from.
And so dad.
You know what? Congratulations. You are still husband of the year. But no.
Okay, well, we did have our question. Did you think of a question? I have one. Okay, so my question is, can you describe your most iconic outfit as a child that you remember?
Yeah, so there are two things that come to mind. One is, I don't know why and where and how or any of this came together, but I think I must have been in like grade 3, grade 4. I don't remember, but it was a pink button-up like church shirt, like something you would wear to church. It was like a light pink. Like it might be white, but you move a little bit closer and you're like, is that pink in it? One of those with a denim vest, and I remember wanting to wear these cut-off leather gloves with it so bad. Like, so bad. And I remember also, I think this is part of the same era, and it probably ties into the same outfit. I wanted pink Converse so bad. Like, Dan had baby blue ones, I think, and I wanted the pink ones so bad. And I think I ended up getting them, but that whole, like, I wanted to be like a Michael Jackson, like, something in there, I think, and I thought it was so cool. And it only lasted for like a week, and I realized like how uncool it was. But yeah, it was definitely like, at least at that time. So it would have been like pink dress shirt, denim vest, cut off leather gloves, and pink Converse as like a young child.
It feels like this would be the same era when you did the lip sync contest to "Eat It" by Michael Jackson.
Oh,
do you remember this?
Well, it was actually "Eat It" by Weird Al Yankovic, who's doing the parody of Beat It. Yeah, that was it. It would have been that same time period. And it's probably heavily influenced by that. In fact, I'm going to actually go and look for the music video for Eat It. We will post it with the episode so people can see what we're talking about for those who are not cultured enough to know Eat It by Weird Al. I'm willing to bet there's an outfit in there that looks strikingly similar to me wanting to do.
And I remember you guys doing like a whole little like skit with it. It must have been from the video, but there was like cereal involved, and you guys were like acting out the eating of the cereal.
Yeah, there's a video of it somewhere too. Like someone has a VHS of that. Did you do Lollipop or something?
No, I did Stupid Cupid, and I was probably 5. I could still tell you from start to finish that. And I believe Mom also did the Locomotion, which is just like, I'm saying it now, my palms are getting sweaty. Why our whole family was doing a lip sync contest together is crazy.
And I'm fairly certain that if we all joined the talent show or the lip sync contest, we also probably practiced it at family home evening on a Monday night, somewhere in between Booga Wooga and us scrambling to close the blinds so neighbors couldn't see us assembling in our living room. But yeah, I think... And
just like rewinding the tapes over and over again, being like, and go, and pressing play.
Why did we do that kind of stuff? Anyways, I'm legitimately sweating.
And now I always tell my family my greatest wish is for me to die and no one know my name. I want to die and people say Jacqueline Curtis died and people say who, and that's my greatest wish. I want to truly just fade into obscurity. And the fact that when we were kids we were such like razzle dazzle in everybody's face children, and I'm like, truly I don't know her.
I'm getting Nardwuar on it already. I don't know if people know who Nardwuar is, but he's this Canadian media personality who does these interviews where he like digs up the wildest factual information from people's lives, and he'll be like, tell me about Michael Sanders on 36 Ave, and the people are like, what? How did you know? And he's like, and how about chicken from Mr. Bob's Chicken Shack? And they're like, how did you know that? And he's like, and do these lyrics ring a bell? And he like recites their first rap lyrics ever. And they're like, who have you talked to? I'm going to get him to compile all the information in the next 5 years or so.
What's that high number of subscribers? I truly don't know because this is pod LARPing. I don't, what? So if we meet
in the tens of thousands?
Okay, if we meet a certain milestone, you can set that milestone. I have kept every journal from when I started keeping a journal when I was 8 years old and I kept it till I was 18. If we meet a certain number, a milestone, I will get those out and I will read from them. And
I can just react. It's just reaction videos.
Yes.
I can react to your journal entries. So I also kept a journal sporadically. Every entry, literally, like I think Mom still has my only journal. And every entry is like, I'm grounded again. It's like, that's like how it starts. Because I would only write in my journal when I was like banished to my bedroom and couldn't. Yeah, it's like I was just being bad. And it's like, I'm grounded again because Dan did this and I did this. The end.
Mine is just a categorical and chronological list of all our pets and when they died to the date.
In the 19th year of the reign of the judges, we said goodbye to Snowball. I'm glad we both went to Snowball. Yes. He was on Christmas Eve. That one still hurts. That was on Christmas Eve. And Dad, the ground was too cold to put him in the pet cemetery. So Dad put him in a plastic bag and put him in a dumpster behind IGA, which was Food City. But just put him in. Can you imagine? Imagine the scene. It's Christmas Eve. It's nighttime. There is a man digging through a dumpster. Is he looking for a Christmas meal? No. He is disposing of the body of his dead guinea pig. Just that's it. I want you to picture it. I want you to close your eyes and see that. The steam coming out of his mouth as he...
The more we're doing these, the more I'm just like, Dad is an angel, man. The stuff like, good grief. This poor man. We really put him through it.
All right. So, your iconic outfit. Let's go to it.
Wow. So, strangely enough, mine is vest related as well. Mine had a vest. So, me and my best friend at the time, we went to the same elementary school for a couple of years. I think we've talked about this, that we were really close with our grade 5 teacher, my grade 5 teacher. I don't know what she taught for you, Miss Ross.
2, 4, and 6.
But, I only had her 1 year. But we hatched this plan, me and my best friend. We were in the same class. It met in the portable. We didn't even have a real classroom. And that we were going to show up in the same outfit and act like it was a surprise. But, like, when I say it was the same outfit, I mean, for, like, head to toe, same socks, same shoes. We bought them from the Byway together. And this vest that was, if you'll remember them, they were, like, tapestries on the front, but satin on the back, like a waiter. And it had, like, a little, like, cinch at the back with a buckle. And
yeah, I know.
We showed up to school and tried to talk everybody. And everybody was like, you obviously planned this. And it'd be like, no, we just... And it was a red turtleneck, this black and white tapestry waiter vest, tight, like tapered pants, and then these boots. They were called desert boots. And they were like suede boots with like a turned down cuff. I don't know if you remember. They look like Peter Pan boots. And head to toe. And yeah, I still to this day, just like, why would we try to talk everybody into thinking that it just happened that way? But 10-year-old Jack would get it together.
If that was today and it was like an office setting, it would be hilarious. And you know what? Actually... This is like a thing I've seen on TikTok and Instagram where people like dress their husbands the same way but don't tell.
Yes, so they're like,
and then everyone shows up and they're like, it's actually hilarious. Like if you think about it, me at this age, I would find it hilarious. If Noah came to me and was like, tomorrow, me and my best friend are dressing the exact same, I'll be like, I'm bringing you both out right now. We are doing this to the highest degree.
She's like, Dad, we have to go to Byway.
Byway and Bargain Herald's. Google that, folks. Google it.
Speaking of things to Google, I am holding up my chaotic notes for today, which I wrote.
I want to find out that really all you're doing is copying Wikipedia word for word. You just print it out, but no, you're going through the penmanship practice of just copying Wikipedia.
I'm really excited about today's because it's just like the perfect like trifecta of things that would affect us, because it's about clothes that we would have worn as a kid, siblings, and just a weird thing that only we know about. This is definitely going to be one where you can go and tell people about it afterwards. And I'm not even going to explain the connection. I'm just going to dive into it and you'll get it as we go along.
Okay.
So I want to tell you about these brothers, and they have the unfortunate problem of being named Adolf and Rudolph.
Adolf and Rudolph?
Yeah, Adolf and Rudolph. They're the Dassler brothers. And
wait, was Rudolph first? And they were like, we need another Dolph name. I'm sorry, but this is the only one remaining. Adolf, I'm sorry.
To be fair, Rudolph was born in 1898, and Adolf is born 2 years later. They're about the same gap as you and Daniel. And I believe that Rudolph, the older one, actually fights in World War I. They're from Germany, as you might have guessed from their names.
Really? You don't say.
And, well, Rudolph is away at war. They actually go by Rudy and Audie, so that's a little bit easier to stomach.
Let's do Rudy and Audie for this one
Adolf
because I don't want someone to flag this podcast as like hate speech or something. We are not. We are talking this. Now it's definitely getting flagged.
It's gonna get there. Sorry, censors. So Rudy and Audie, while Rudy's off at war, Audie starts making things. He starts making things in a shop made specifically out of things that he finds throughout the war. So like bits and pieces of scavenging. He's scavenging leather and that kind of things. And he starts making things like piecing together shoes from parachutes and using the leather from helmets and stuff. And he can make shoes out of this. So when Rudy comes home from war, they decided to start a shoe company together. And I'm going to try my hand at German right now.
I can't wait.
Because they start what's called the Gerbunder Dassler Schuhfabrik, which basically just means the Dassler Shoe Company. And it just seems so aggressive, the German language. So Audie starts this business, Rudy comes home, and they join the business together. And they start doing really well. Now that the war's over, they can go into business together, and they have their factory. In 1925, they start making football cleats and track shoes, specifically things with cleats on the bottom of them. That's like what they specialize in. And they start getting into the Olympics. They start gaining access to Olympic athletes and start doing what is probably one of the first merchandising sponsorship deals, where they offer shoes to these Olympic athletes in exchange for the Olympic athletes talking about them. The first Olympics they go to are in 1928 with the Amsterdam, and the German who wears the shoes wins gold in track. Then they go to 1932 in Los Angeles. The German who wears them in track also wins gold. 1936 is their biggest year because that's the year, if you're familiar with Jesse Owens, the American who broke like 90 Olympic records in the same day, right before the outbreak of World War II. Jesse Owens is wearing Dassler shoes when it happens. And so that's a huge deal for them. And Dassler Company goes huge at that point in time, and just before the war they see a sales spike and they are selling 200,000 pairs of shoes per year.
That
just
is
from their
wild.
little factory in Germany.
To think, no social media, there's no commercials for this brand.
Organic.
Yeah, this is all organic. This is word of mouth, organic growth.
And of course everything comes to a screeching halt when 1939, 1940 hits and Germany goes to war. And Audie and Rudy are not playing for the right team. They are raging Nazis and they immediately go to war. Rudy is conscripted, and Audie also is conscripted, but he basically talks who's ever in charge of German war that he needs to stay back and run the factory making other things. So Audie doesn't necessarily have to go to war. He stays back with his family and he's building things. They convert the shoe factory into creating uniforms and boots that the German army needs, and so he is allowed to stay back from war. Throughout the whole war, their families are then stuck kind of living all together because they have to live together in one house. That's what they've been allotted. Again, they are members of the Nazi Party. And their wives, from everything I've read, hate each other. And so they're all living together. Their parents are living there, both their families, their kids, and their wives are just like, for 5 straight years during the war, living together and hating every moment of it. And I think their names are Friedel and Kathy, but they just hate each other, and the tensions are so high. And so
if I had to imagine two people who wouldn't get along, if I was writing a story and I had to think of 2 names of people who just for sure are destined to hate each other, Friedel on one side and Kathy right there, those two.
Classic Kathy and Friedel.
There's no way. That's oil and water.
I know, and you're thinking about, like, we don't, because we all live so far apart, we don't actually get together. Spoiler alert, we don't get up together all that often. But when we do get together, one thing I'm really specific about is, like, families should have their own space when we're together. And I think part of that is just when, like, families are overlapping, I think it's a bad idea. Like, families should have their own space, because it's all fine to share space when you're just, like, a bunch of siblings who are used to each other's, like, weird idiosyncrasies. But the moment you add in spouses or partners and then add kids to that, like the gloves are off. Like, everybody's doing what they want to do, whether or not that's what you like.
And how they normally do it, right? And no matter what, like, when people leave home at 18, 19, 20 years old, their habits start to, like, diverge, I guess is what I'm looking for. Like, they really start to change a little bit. And by the time you're in your 40s, those things are now drastically different. The way that you organize a fridge, the way that this person gets ready for the morning, the way that this person cleans up, the way this person does dishes, like all of those things now, as somebody whose mother-in-law is currently staying in our house, like, I'm like, you are doing everything wrong. I am sorry. That's not how we do it here. That's how I feel like with anybody. Like, we get together, I'm like, excuse me, did you just close the peanut butter jar like that? Or did you just dry the dishes like that? Or did you just put that there? Like, and I'm sure everyone's doing that to me and for everybody else. But yeah, you just get the way that you do it and then it's not happening.
And there are things that our family does that, like, actively trigger me now because I don't like the way they were done. And so, like, I've built my life around, like, not being late. So I'm a very punctual person. Being late is, like, a massive trigger for me. Growing up, I don't think there was a single time that we were ever on time for something. And I disliked that, right? That's something that causes me stress. So, like, now that I'm an adult with my own family, I'm 15 minutes early to everything. But then we go to visit and everybody's so slow and and we're late to things, and mom's like, I don't care, they can start without me. And I'm like, no, I am not going back to this place. I am an adult human and I can be on time.
I spent 30 years and a lot of money trying to get away from these problems, and we're right back here.
A gallon size of Ativan. I'm like,
freebasing it from a glass pipe in the bathroom.
One time I was home visiting and we decided to go to a movie with mom and dad, and I don't think mom and dad have ever been on time for a movie. And we had my kids, my two oldest, and they were just little at the time, and mom and dad were like, it's not, Jacqueline, it's not a big deal, like, it's just previews. And I refused to go into the movie with them. I made them sit in the parking lot until the next showing to, like, teach them a lesson about the importance of punctuality. And I was like, no, I'm not doing this with you. Like, I'm setting my boundary. My boundary is I don't need to be late for movies.
Quick side note, yesterday I brought Noah to a movie theater. We definitely arrived after the first few previews had finished. In the dark, we're like, we get up to our seat, we sit down, we had churros, and she had a water and I had a tea, and we sit down, and I'm like, all right. I'm like, do you need to go to the bathroom? She's like, yeah. I'm like, me too, let's go. So I walk out, go to the bathroom, come back in, the movie has started. I'm fully like, it's fine, we're good. So that's something that definitely I will hold that torch and pass it down to another generation. I'm okay with being late.
Honestly, the worst part about this story to me is that you brought a tea to a movie theater?
I got it at the movie theater.
A psychopath?
An iced tea.
Who drinks tea at a movie theater? Okay, iced tea. I thought you meant, like, literally, like, I'm just picturing, like, a mug of tea, and you're like, excuse me.
I pulled it out of my denim vest inside pocket.
I always order a hot dog at the movie theater, which is probably most disgusting habit.
Sorry,
which I
you're
know.
going on excuse me. A tea is not allowed.
On time.
Somehow eating a Frankfurter. Let's go back. Let's keep it.
It's been on, like, the rollers.
Yeah,
sitting on
just
the roll.
sweaty. Just a sweaty. Can I get the sweatiest hot dog?
I always get a hot dog before I go. It's just something triggers in my brain. I enter a movie theater, I'm like, I need a hot dog. And so I went to the front, and the movie was starting, and they were like, we don't have any hot dogs ready. And I was like, well, how long is it going to be? They were like, oh, like 10 minutes. And I was like, oh, and they're like, we could bring it to you. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that sounds great. I'm on time, I still got my hot dog. So I go to sit down. I didn't realize that when they said, we'll bring it to you, they meant they were going to hand it to the first person at the start of the row. And every person in the row was going to then pass
after
down
taking a
the
bite?
hot dog to So I'm just watching. I see the worker come in with a hot dog. I'm like, oh, good, my hot dog. And then I see them hand it to the first person. I'm like, no. And just every person. I'm like 20 seats in, and everybody's just like, and I'm like, this is the most, like, yep, that's me. I needed a hot dog. I could last 10 minutes.
I hope some comedy writer is listening to this right now, and they put that into a show. I would die if I saw that scene in a comedy. I would be dying. Like, that's just hilarious. Someone passing a hot dog. There's 15 people have touched this thing, and the best part is I wanted to zoom out and you be on the end of the other side where they could have walked up and just handed it to you there, but then on the other side just pass it all the way across.
I'm like, no, I said with mustard. I hit it back, and it goes all the way back.
Oh. Anyways, Nazis and shoes. Let's go back.
Nazis and shoes. Wives hate each other.
Yeah.
So they get back from the war. The war ends. Guess what? Germans lose, and Nazis lose really bad. And because they're both active members of the Nazi Party, but because Rudy was the one who was actually in the army, he eventually goes to trial. And first what happens is the American soldiers come to take over their small town that they live in. And Audie does something really interesting. They come to occupy it, and Audie's like, hey, did you know this is where Jesse Owens gets his shoes? And the American soldiers are like, Jesse Owens, we love Jesse Owens. So he actually kind of saves the factory by telling them this, because then all the American soldiers are like, we want to get our shoes made by the same people who make Jesse Owens shoes. So Audie kind of has this upper hand. Rudy comes home and is about to go to trial for this, and it becomes this brother war where they now are playing who was the bigger Nazi. Because Audie's like, I was playing for the Americans, I gave them all these shoes. Rudy's like a super big Nazi, and Rudy's like, no, Audie was making stuff for the army, he's the biggest Nazi. And they both go to trial for being members of the Nazi Party. And they both testify against each other.
Oh my gosh. What is with these brothers? Back in the McDonald's episode too, there's always this point where they just sell each other out. And it's not even like they just drop a little, they go full on war with each other, and it ends horribly.
When I read stories about this extreme sibling rivalry, and I'm like, rivalry? Extreme sibling rivalry. And I'm like, truly can't relate, but I think it would be harder if we were all living in the same place. This town that they lived in, 20,000 people, they employed a lot of people, and then now they're fighting for just to not go to jail, basically. And they're going to do whatever. So what happens is Audie's punishment is that he cannot run the factory for a year. Rudy's punishment is that he goes to jail for a year. And so in the meantime, their wives, who truly hate each other, are running things in their stead for the year where they're, I guess, reaping their punishment for being Nazis. Audie suspected Rudy of cheating with his wife, which is really interesting to me because there were also, Rudy had journal entries where he was complaining about Audie's wife. Audie's wife was really young, and he felt like she was kind of a know-it-all. She was 16, 17-year-olds when she came into the family, and suddenly she had all these ideas of how to run the shoe factory, and Rudy was like, absolutely not. But then Audie suspected them of cheating with each other. So there was layers upon layers, Nazis, cheating, quite hating each other. There's a lot going on in the Dassler family. In 1948, Rudy's out of prison, Audie's back in charge. They decide to formally split the company, and they become two separate shoe companies. They both use the first letters and the last letters of their names to create the shoe companies. What could the names be?
It's Adidas. One of them is 100% Adidas.
Yes.
There's no question.
Adidas, which would probably pronounce Adidas if
Adidas.
say Adidas.
Well, that's how they say it in Europe, I believe, right? Adidas. And so I'm guessing it's the Dassler shoe company.
Yeah,
and
it's Adi Dassler.
Yeah, so I totally get that one. But you said there's another one? Mm-hmm. And you said R?
And this one, he takes, so it's Rudy's company, and he actually changes it slightly after naming it.
But it starts with an R, you said?
It originally started with an R. So it's his original company is Ruda, so Rudy Dassler. So there's Adidas, Adi Dassler, then Rudy starts his as Ruda, which is later changed to Puma.
Oh.
So these are the shoe companies that are created by the Dassler brothers. It gets crazier still. So they create Adidas and Puma. This entire town that they live in, 20,000 people, is split by a river. If you are working for Adidas, you live on one side of the river. If you are with Puma, you're on the other side of the river. They do not cross over anytime.
This is a situation where I'm guessing jobs are probably
Scarce.
Scarce.
There we go.
So they're probably all working. You know, anyone who's from a small town where there's a factory or factories, everybody's working at those factories. So is this a situation where literally like everybody is working for one factory or the other factory and living on one side of the river or the other side of the river, depending on which company they're working for?
Absolutely. No, they live, they work, they shop. They even ban marriage across the river. So people who work for Adidas are only to marry people who work for Adidas. And the same with Puma. If you work for Puma, you marry someone who works for Puma. So that's how strict it is. And not only that, their family then breaks up because they have parents and siblings as well. Their mom is Team Rudy. She goes to work for Puma. Their sister Marie is Team Adidas. She goes to work for Adidas. They literally draw the line straight through the family.
I'm picturing this in my brain right now that every time a family member is making the decision, they're doing it like a gender reveal. They get the whole family on the banks of the river. And they've got balloons, or they've got pinatas. They've got some kind of confetti, and it just shoots out the logo of the company that they're choosing. A bunch of people cheer. A bunch of people cry. Adidas tracksuits. Right, just boom. It's like one of those like outfit changing magicians. Where boom, now they've got the Puma tracksuit on. Boom, they've got the Adidas full 3-stripe tracksuit on.
I can't get over the fact that the mom chose. Like I guess I get siblings choosing like to be on a different team with a sibling, but your own mother's like, I'm Puma all the way, and you're like, Mom, are you serious right now?
I want to know how fast it happened. They're like, Mom, we're gonna explain to you the situation. I'm doing Adidas on this side. Rudolph's doing Puma on that side. Puma? Mom, I haven't even Puma.
Like,
no, I haven't even finished explaining. You have a decision, Puma? All right, Mom, I'm out of here.
She's like, I just like the logo better. It's more exciting. So this continues, and it continues into 1954. And because they've had such past success with sponsoring athletes, that's exactly what they start doing again, is they are sponsoring athletes, but they start bidding against each other pretty aggressively. Like it's every athlete is courted by Puma and Adidas, and they take basically the highest bidder. In the 1954 World Cup, Adidas sponsors West Germany. They win. So huge coup for Adidas, and Adidas is on top. Then they're continuing sponsoring athletes. In the 1970 World Cup, they decide on something because it's gotten so out of control with the bidding wars. The brothers come together. They are bitter rivals at this point, but they come together and they make what is called the Pelé Pact. And that's the decision that no one, because he is so popular, no one is actually going to sponsor Pelé in the World Cup because it would be too expensive for both companies to bid against each other. So they're like, as brothers, we hate each other. We've drawn family lines, but this is like the one thing we can agree on is that we do not have the money to try and bid against each other for Pelé. Unfortunately, Rudy goes behind Adi's back and he sponsors Pelé. And not only does he sponsor Pelé for Puma, he hatches this plan with Pelé that before the World Cup starts, Pelé's going to pretend like his shoelace is untied, stop the referee, and reach down and tie up his shoes, which are Puma Kings, which is like their best known cleat, I guess. I don't know. I'm not a Puma person. So the cameras for the 1970 World Cup are focused for a moment on these Puma King boots that Pelé is lacing up. And that ends the relationship between brothers completely. According to what I've read, they never speak to each other again. Brazil wins that World Cup. Pelé wins. And in 1974, Rudy is dying of lung cancer and asked to see Adi. Remember that Rudy's the one that screwed over Adi. He asks to see Adi before he dies. Adi refuses. Rudy dies in 1974. 4 years later, Adi dies as well.
I wanted to hear that Rudy calls him in, and Adi enters the room, and Rudy goes, just one thing.
And just does the finger?
No, he pulls up the bed sheets, leans over, and pretends to tie his shoe, and then passes away.
Poetic. Someone should write a movie about
So again, for those of you who are listening to this and also who pen the scripts for movies and dramas, and there you go, another freebie from us.
You're welcome. 1989, the families can't manage without them, decide the right thing is to sell both companies, and their families sell them. And they are no longer, neither family has any stake in either Adidas or Puma.
Really?
Yes. Just because I thought it was interesting, Adidas does $224 billion in sales, and Puma does 5.9 billion of sales per year, but neither of their families are involved.
Wild.
There you
Absolutely
go.
wild.
That's the Dassler brothers. The convergence of like siblings, interesting. Weird fact that nobody knows, interesting. But also, I feel like we were an Adidas family growing up. I am not an Adidas. I do not belong to an Adidas family to this day. We are definitely a Nike family, which Nike is the stakes basically. Number one is obviously Nike. Number two is Adidas, and number three is Puma. Do you find that things that influence your like purchasing decisions as an adult are things that you had attitudes towards as a kid?
There was when we were kids, there were like fake gazelles that had 4 stripes on them, and like there was nothing more embarrassing, but we had to, like, we got that. And then I remember I wanted Reebok pumps so bad, but instead of getting Reebok pumps, I got Lynx pumps. Because they're the same thing, just with a different logo. And it's like, but it's not the same thing. It's the logo that matters. Like, that's what it was. I remember getting a pair of Lynx pumps and, like, wearing them to school and just doing all of the mental gymnastics of, like, how am I going to convince other people that these are actually the cool ones and that Reeboks are the uncool ones? And so, like, those things definitely still stick in my brain as, like, not the positive relationship with these brands, but, like, the embarrassment that came from not being able to wear those brands.
The first paycheck I ever got from Loblaws, there was a shoe store across the plaza from Loblaws, and I went on my break and I bought a pair of yellow striped gazelles, and Mom was furious with me that that's what I had spent my first paycheck on. But it was like the first time I had expendable income to myself. I was like, I gotta get in those Adidas, like I gotta get in that.
So do you have any unhinged texts from the recent 3 weeks? I feel like there have been many.
I do. And this is extremely niche and something that, so Jonathan, who is 3 years younger than me, we both have a fixation on a very specific song from our childhood, to the point that, like, a lot of our texts are just, like, sending back and forth bits of information about this song, and, like, there's a documentary about this song, like, and he sent me, I can't remember, let me see. I can't remember if I sent it to him or he sent it to me, but it was a musician talking about how they created this song. I'm going to play what the actual video was that we sent. And you can guess, I want you to guess what song it is that we are fixated upon.
So this is basically what you hear.
The Thong Song?
Jonathan,
it's the Thong Song.
Yes, it's absolutely the Thong Song. We, like, out of nowhere, I will get just a message from Jonathan, and it's like a tweet about the Thong Song, or a documentary about the Thong Song, or this violinist who put down the violin track on the Thong Song. And that's just my most unhinged thing, is like, we just have this fixation on why the Thong Song exists, why Cisco was a thing, why in this point in time was he popular for 3 minutes in, like, what is it, 98 or something, when the Thong Song was out, which is, so that was my unhinged text was,
and it was
the
just
violinist talking about.
It was just that, the violinist. And so that, just for the record, and that's also a pun, by the way, double entendre maybe, but just for the record, that violin piece, was it specifically for the Thong Song? Like, they brought in a violinist and they're like, let us explain to you the concept, and we need you to just hit us with some violin heat to match the topic of this song.
It was absolutely, yeah. It was absolutely just that musician. There's an entire, I'm not kidding, there's an entire documentary about the creation of the Thong Song and, like, why it even exists, and it is truly fascinating.
And there you have it. Episode number 5 of the Dreyer Drive podcast. As you can tell, we still need a little bit of work on how to wrap these things up, because we just talk and I've got to figure out where to put in the outro music. If you like what you heard today, please rate this podcast. Please subscribe. It really helps other people discover this podcast and feel equally as disgusted as you when you heard about Jacqueline eating sweaty hot dogs in a movie theater. We'll see you next week.